Hi there guys, Bushy here. I'm just going to do a little show on how I sharpen an axe. This is just a small, just a small general purpose. I use it around the garden a bit, don't tend to use it in the bush much over here. More used for a parang generally over here than an axe, but they come in handy every now and then, especially around camp work. This particular one, I was reading, I think I picked it off the internet somewhere, and went and had a look, and I purchased this from the Husqvarna shop. And although it was quite rough, I did clean off, I thinned and slightly cleaned off the edges here. That was just done by hand. That was before I had the bench, before I had my belt grinder. So this was actually done by, I cleaned it off by hand, put about half an hour, something like that, with a stone. Good bit of really fine sandpaper, followed by wet and dry, wire wool, a bit of wire wool on the hand just to give it a really good clean off, and some linseed oil to clean it up. And I ended up with a really nice axe for, I believe this was $60 compared to $120, which was the equivalent axe made by Wetterlings in the Wetterlings factory, which is where these come from. And it even has a little stamp on it. And they're hand forged with a good hickory shaft for less than half the price you'd pay if you went for something like a Wetterlings, and virtually a third of the price over here especially of a Gransforth Brooks. They are not as fine, they're not, the working area is not as fine as the Gransforth. It doesn't make, it's not as good as my Gransforth Woods, I think it's a woodsman's axe or something like that, Hunter's, my Gransforth Hunter's axe. When it comes to carving, it's not quite as good, but it certainly bloody does the job, and for a third of the price, you know, if I didn't have the two to compare side by side, I would be more than happy with this. And I actually use it quite a lot, and probably because I'm a bit rougher on it. I've just had to clean some, I've just been cleaning some burrs off now, and I thought, oh, I'll just show you what I do when I can sharpen an axe. All I use for my axes and things, and a lot of stuff, machetes, tends to be like a little puck. File sometimes, if I need to get if there's any really damage on there, I use a file to clean them off. Other than that, I just use a puck. A little tip with these, whether you're using these or India oil stones or anything like that, is if you're going to use them in the field, when you're at home, only ever use either plain water or water with a drop of washing up liquid in it. You don't need anything else, you don't need to put anything on them. If you start soaking these in oil at home, using whether it's WD-40 or whatever, then that tends to soak into the stone, and then what happens is when you just use them with water out in the field, they don't work as well. They tend to clog up. So I just stick to water whether I'm at home or anywhere else. So I'll bob you just a bit lower down so you can actually see what I'm doing, and I will get a gorilla pod or something eventually so you can actually move things around without having to make you guys see sick moving the camera. But here we are, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing when I get you down here. So here's the axe. Now the first thing is get it somewhere solid. You know, whether if you're out in the bush, get it on a branch or a tree stump or anywhere so it's nice and firm and solid. Get yourself some water, little pot of water. You can do this next to a stream or anywhere like that, doesn't really matter. If you're at home, make sure you don't mind that the water's going to go on the floor, because you give this, just keep dipping the stone into the water so it's nice and wet. And then basically all I do is I hold the stone like here. Hopefully you can see my fingers on there. So I've got a finger, it's halfway down the stone on either side, and then I put my other finger in the middle at the back. So I've almost hold it in a line across the centre of the stone. And the reason for that is when you're sharpening an axe, you actually want a slightly convex edge. And that slight convex edge, which would sort of like, look, that's an exaggeration, but a slight convex edge is a stronger edge. It will hold up longer than just putting a flat bevel on there. Makes it a lot stronger. Bear in mind what you're doing with the axe. And the other thing with an axe is I don't go for super duper mega razor sharp. The simple reason for that is when you're using an axe, you have the weight of the axe to cut with. So it needs to be sharp, don't get me wrong. I like them, you know, I get them sharp, but not to the same sort of level I would be taking my sheath knife or pocket knife. But definitely sharp. I don't waste the extra time on that. I don't need it. You know, using the weight of the axe, not driving it, just the weight of the axe, does everything I need it to do as long as it's got a good edge on it. And to do that, keep it nice and firm. Remember how I told you to hold the stone? Now I'm working around with my fingers, and what I'm feeling is that I do small circles, and what I'm looking to do is to make my fingers, which are across the centre of the stone, sort of like go up the edge of the stone.
And what you'll feel is that the puck actually feels like it's doing that as you're going up the edge. And that's all you need. Good firm downward pressure and that slight roll of the stone is all you need to put a convex edge on there. If you try and keep it too flat, what happens is you grind the edge back and back and back, and it gets thicker and thicker up here. By doing it this way, you're putting the edge on and at the same time sharpening quite a way back and helping to keep that shoulder down and keep the shoulder a bit further back. Some people grind the shoulders off completely. I don't. It's that shoulder that helps the axe to push the wood away from where you're working. And I do this a number of times, just like when you're sharpening a knife. As it goes, you'll feel it bite. You can feel it biting on the way up. Keep an edge for that little burr developing on the other side as soon as you start to feel anything. Move my pot of water before I knock it off. Turn the axe over. This time I'm working from the top to the bottom. So I'm working from the top of the head here, down towards the heel of the shaft. Before I work from the heel of the shaft up, so working that opposite direction. What my dad taught me, and he was a joiner, I won't go and argue with him, is that just helps to stop the burr from developing. Exactly the same motion again, nice and firm. And here I have had quite a bit of use on this axe just lately, so I'm actually on the coarse stone here. Wouldn't necessarily go to the coarse if I was just touching it up. Same thing on a strop. I like to use a loose strop on the axe rather than on the block, simply because the give that you develop in the loose strop is enough to give you that convex edge. Again, just checking where we're at. As soon as I start to feel that burr develop, getting time to move over. Plenty of water, keep the stone going. If you have to do this on a few occasions, just keep turning the stone and it'll make your stone wear evenly. Then you don't get a big dish in the middle of your stone, making it pretty much useless. There we go. I'll have a little, whoops, dropping my bloody stone on the floor. Quick look. You're just gently feeling for any burrs, any rough edges, flat spots. There we go, to that point, and then it's time to swap the stone over onto the fine side. Again, just keep it in the rubber housing. Good splash of water, and we're on to the fine stone. Pass, flip it over. This is why it definitely helps to be doing this. That's better, there we go. Definitely helps to be doing this on somewhere solid, because that's what allows you to just flick it over and then work on the top. So there's not much I can do about not being able to see this side, but there we go. Flip it over. Other side again. Hold the axe nice and firm. Few lighter touches. I find doing it this way, there's very little, unless you actually grind it backwards and forwards, it's very rare you get a burr developing. That quick clean off. And then basically what I'm looking for now is any shiny parts that might have developed on there. No, I can't see anything shining back at me from the sunshine. So, next step. Just grab out my strop. Right. There we go. There it is. I'll just bob you back up here. Right, so here's the strop, just off a nail on the ceiling. Just a big old leather belt.
Bit of polishing compound on one side, keeping this nice and tight. Draw the axe down and off, down and off. Just like on a knife, don't be tempted to flick it this way. Actually when you run the axe, keep it tight and let the axe come off the end. Turn it over, bring it down and off, up and off. The reason for that is if you're bringing it down the strop and then you turn it over on the strop, as you're turning it over, basically you're running the edge on the actual polishing compound, and that's an abrasive. So what you're actually doing, when you see people doing this, is they're actually taking the edge off, because they're actually running the edge directly over the abrasive. So off, let it come off, turn it over. You can bring it up, lift it, if you wish to. I just find it easier just to let it come off, because I can start from one corner, work to the other corner and back. Anyway, that'll clean. Can't feel any burrs, so we'll just have a little look. Like I say, you're not looking for anything hair popping sharp here, just something that will just not ideal picking a piece of soggy audible paper off the but as you can see there, nothing super special, no fancy sharpening stones, anything like that. A few minutes work. I mean, the reality is, even just doing that, I don't know if I'll take sure I've got bits on my arm that never actually grow back anymore, but you can see all the grag on there. Whoops, get into picture. And you end up with little bald patches on your arm and hairs on the axe. So it's certainly not hair popping sharp, that's what I was saying earlier. You know, I don't go for sort of like an ultra shiny, polished hair popping edge. When you've got something with 3/4 of a pound behind it, smacks into something, that kind of an edge is not going to last very long. Looks good, looks great in fact, but in reality it doesn't hold up. I mean, if I was going to use this axe for a lot of splitting, I wouldn't even take it to that level of an edge. I would quite literally, all I would ever do is make sure that it's not, you know, blunt as in got chunks or anything missing out of it. I would literally just clean it up. I certainly would not sharpen it to anywhere near that level, because when you're splitting wood, you're actually wanting the axe to dig in and split, not bite. And a lot of people, that even with a splitting axe, they put a really good edge on them. I split a lot of wood. We have log fire, we have wood burners, and I split a lot of wood. And I used to keep my axe really sharp. And it was actually a friend of mine, he's an arborist, and he said, "Oh God, no, hell, don't you know, you want a limbing axe, it needs to be sharp, not a splitting axe." So I stopped actually sharpening the axe and just kept any dings off it that, you know, if you could hit a nail or, you know, seasoned knot. And other than that, I stopped. And to be honest, once my axe went blunt, it split a lot better than it did when it was sharp. However, for general purpose use, for limbing, general light splitting when I'm out in the bush, bit of carving, that's all you need. And that's how easy it is to do. So, hope you like that. Hope that was informative. If you like. If you don't, what are you watching it for? And press the like button, miserable buggers. The amount of people who watch videos on YouTube and you don't press the like button. It's a shame. But anyway, hope you found it interesting. Like I said, these are not expensive, you know, and that's literally all that and an old belt. That's all you need to keep your axe sharp and clean. You do not need to be spending. If you want to, you can, because they are lovely. You know, but what I'm saying is you don't have to be spending hundreds of dollars on Japanese water stones, diamond stones and things like that. You don't need them. Not for axes. I'll do one on a parang. I've got a parang here. Well used and nanky. But I'll show you what I do with that on another video. A bit too long if I keep going now. But it's very similar. Very, very similar. Not quite the same, but very similar, because that's got to go to a much better edge, because that's what finer cutting. But like I say, there's the axe. $60 from the Wetlands factory, from the Husqvarna shop. Half price. from normal. And that wasn't in a sale, that's just what they go for because it's different. And probably it took me maybe a good 40 minutes of work on it to thin the shoulder down here, clean the shaft up. Great little piece of work, great little working axe. And I'm not panicking about what I do with it because it's not $200 from a, you know, well, $180 whatever they are, Gransforth. But beautiful axes, I have one, they are beautiful axes. But again, if you've got the money, great, get them. If you haven't, don't feel you're any way disadvantaged or anything like that. Like I say, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on sharpening gear to get a bloody good workable axe that you can keep at. And hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. And like I say, if you're looking at your axe being blunt, give it a go. What are you going to do? Grind a bit of metal off. So with that, I'll catch you next one, guys. Like I say, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want. Awesome. Get out there doing it. Or else you won't need to sharpen your tools. There's a thought. Hi guys, couple of things I forgot to say when I was making the video of the axe sharpening. I suppose quite important things really at the end of the day. One is about the this little Husqvarna axe, which I said in the time that I believe it was made by Wetterlings. I'm not 100% certain on that because apparently I've done a little bit more reading about this. I was just at Google around and finding a bit of a smaller one. I wanted a little, like a little pocket axe sort of thing. And it turns out that they Husqvarna get axes made by Wetterlings and also by Barco, I think it's Barco. But anyway, there's a couple of companies that do it. And I'm not, no, is it Hultafors? Hultafors, it's Hultafors. Wetterlings and Hultafors have made the axes for Husqvarna. Now I think this one is from Wetterlings because, and I'm only guessing now, but the Hultafors ones I've seen tend to have a thinner blade here. They tend to be thinner, closer to the Gransforths. So that's, as you can see, the Gransforths, it's a bit thinner, and the Hultafors seem to look a bit more like that. So that's why I'm thinking this is probably a Wetterlings. But anyway, that's an aside. A couple of things I forgot to say is one. When you're following the technique I showed you for sharpening, is the one thing you've got to be careful of is that because you're putting a roll and a natural convex onto that edge, what can happen is it can start to get thicker here because you start to get too steep in an angle. So you've just got to keep an eye on how much of a roll you want there and how sharp you want it, how strong you want the edge. And it's, again, it's that play off. If it's going to be plenty of hard work and all you're going to be doing is splitting with it, limbing with it, all that kind of stuff, generally, you know, heavy camp work, a bit more of a roll is better. Not quite as sharp, again, like I was saying, it's not, you know, it's sharp, but it's not hair popping or anything like that. It's just a sharp axe. Make a hell of a mess. It's a course ender if you miss the tree. So learn what you're doing. Have a look at the Google. Learn. I'll put some of those on as well later. But if either way, you've got to be careful you don't start to get too much roll on it. And sometimes what I've done is, I know to keep an eye on it now. But in the past when it's happened a little bit. And so sometimes you've just got to work on this bit of an edge here, just a bit back from the blade, and take a bit of meat off of there. And be careful though, because if you actually feel it, if it's been made well, you'll feel almost a little ridge around there. And that's actually a little shoulder that helps to, when you're actually splitting, it sort of like helps the wood to split rather than binding up the shaft. That's one of the things I find with these, is these don't have that. The thinner the head, they're not as good for splitting. They're better for carving because they bite deeper, but they don't split. Whereas that little bit of a shoulder, just back from the edge, can do that. But like I say, you've got to be careful. So you've got to keep rolling it, and just keep an eye on how much of a roll you're getting. So that's one little thing with that. Other than that, crack on. The other thing, and this is my Gransforth, which is, I mean, I've had this for quite a number of years now, and it is my favourite. Simply, I think more, actually, although I don't use it as much, and I don't have as much use for it, more because of the length of time I've had it and the memories linked with it, you know, where it came from and things like that. But this, although I'm starting to do a bit more, I'm hoping to, I'm getting cracked on with that, but I'm going to do a bit more carving and show you guys some of that kind of stuff, actually making things. And that's tend to what I use for that. But basically this I take, and I'm not sure how well that shows up, but I take this to a mirror edge, basically. Now, the sharpening technique, I use exactly the same sharpening technique. The only difference is I spend longer on the fine side, and then as it gets sharper, less and less pressure. But just exactly the same thing, less and less pressure. And then it'll just clean up, and then basically I spend a lot longer on the strop. And just, again, just running it up the strop and letting it roll. Like, you know, actually let the axe roll up that little bit, and that's what polishes, that's what will give you the polish further down, rather than just, you know, near the cutting edge. But it's exactly the same technique, but I prefer a better edge. Now I do actually have, right there, I'm not sure if that will show up, but there's a little nick in this, and there's a little tiny one there where obviously I've caught something with it at some point. And I have the same, I showed you the same on here. Now, I'm not obsessive enough to start grinding them out. The proper way to do that would be you would actually reshape the head, flattening it out, and then resharpening it. I can't be arsed. And these things are too bloody expensive to be losing a couple of mil off the edge every time you hit a, you know, a seasoned knot or you take a little nick out of them. So I can't really be bothered. If it gets to the point where it's affecting what I'm doing, then I'll do my best to sharpen it out or sharpen most of it out. And like the other thing is, I try to be really careful what I do with this. It's a lot finer edge, it's a lot sharper edge. It's not as tough, it's not as strong. So, you know, I'm keep an eye on what sort of things, if I do use it for splitting and carving, keep an eye on the timber. Watch where you get the wood from. Don't forget, if it's been leaning against the ground, or it's near on, you know, touching the ground or anything like that, or you get a piece of timber that you've got and you maybe cut a sapling down or something like that. When you get near to the floor, as the tree's growing, it actually brings up dirt and grit and sand within the bark as it's growing. So, you know, you're better off cleaning that off and be careful what you're using, because if you try to limb small trees really close to the ground, there's often a lot of crap in the bark, and that'll take your edge off. So if you're going to do that, you're better off using your axe. If you're going to maybe use a saw low down, stick to something like 12-18 inch up. If you're going to use a fine knife, you know, if you're using a knife to split, or your axe, a little bit of a tip there. But this one anyway will, until it hits that little dink, it will cut paper with no problem, apart from a little dink in the middle of it. And like I say, for me to take that out, I'd just be losing so much metal. When you've got literally a fraction of a millimetre right there, we've got a little dink in it. But you know, like I say, I have been accused of being a bit obsessive, but I'm not that obsessive. So I hope that was interesting. If it was, I'll keep doing some more bits and pieces like this. Subscribe if you want. Like I say, there's going to be more and more outdoor stuff coming along. I've done a lot of the knife stuff, so it's going to be more on bits of stuff I'm picking up and learning, so they'll get less and less, and hopefully the outdoor stuff will get more and more. So anyway, thanks for giving me your time. Hope you found that interesting. Hope you found it useful, and I'll catch you on the next one, because you'll subscribe and you'll know it's coming out. Have a great weekend, guys, and see you again soon.